All right, so page 5 in your notebook should be Knuckle Mountain. It should be on the left. Page 6 on the right is going to be titled Topographic Maps. Today we're talking all about topographic maps, which you saw yesterday. So you know what they look like. You know they're weird maps with a bunch of lines. But remember, topographic maps show something that normal maps can't show. So if we're looking at a map of the U.S., all we can see is where the states are. I know where Texas is, I know where Florida is, but I can't tell what state has mountains, what state is above sea level, below sea level, what state is hilly. I can't tell any of that. A topographic map shows us the elevation. So that's the first word we need to know. Elevation is just the height. So a topographic map shows height or elevation of landscapes. So if we're looking at a topographic map of the US, we're going to see a bunch of lines, but we're going to know that those lines are showing us elevation. Topographic maps are also taken from a top-down view. So remember yesterday when we drew Knuckle Mountain, we were looking down at our hand and drawing the circles. When you took the saran wrap off, you were left with something like this. Can you see? Something like this. So from here, that just looks like circles. But remember, it's a top-down view. When your fist was like this, you can see the elevation or the height on your fist. When you open it, your circles are now flat. So that's what's a little, I guess, unique about topographic maps is they show elevation with circles from a top-down view. So in order to read the elevation on a topographic map, we have to know the contour. That should say I'm sorry, y'all. That should say contour line. Sorry. I need whiteout. Anyways, we have to know what contour lines are. Contour lines are lines that join points of equal elevation. All right, so when we drew on Knuckle Mountain, we made one big line around the bottom. That line was connecting points of equal elevation. So pretend that line represented 10 centimeters. Every point on that line was 10 centimeters below the lowest level. And for us on a topographic map, the lowest level is sea level. So if the first line you see says it's 10 feet, then it's 10 feet above sea level. And every point on that line is 10 feet. So the main thing you need to know is that a line has the same elevation all the way around. It might only be labeled in one little spot, but you're supposed to know that every place on that line is that elevation. All right, so we're going to draw 2 pictures. We're going to try our best. And up here, so right underneath this, I'm going to draw like a big oval. And then down below it, I'm going to draw a line the same width as my circle. About the same width as my circle. And then I'm going to draw another circle. But notice I made it closer to this side and I left some space on this side. So now I'm going down. And I'm drawing a line across. And I'm making it the same width as my circle. So this big circle is like the lowest point on my knuckles. This is our lowest point of elevation, closest to sea level. Every time we draw another circle, we are moving up the mountain. So I'm going to draw about 4 more circles. All right, so now if I connect my lines down here, I drew a mountain. So every time we draw another line, we drew another line, it's like we took some steps up the mountain. We hiked up the mountain. So the smallest line is the highest point, because think about it, the tops of the mountains are pointed. So they're not going to be this whole big circle to represent the top of the mountain. It's the smallest point. So the smallest area is going to be at the highest elevation. Pretend we're talking about Mount Everest and we are talking about thousands of feet up. Well, Mount Everest is not very wide at the top. So the smallest circle is the top or the highest point of our mountain. Let's compare. So watch what I do. I'm going to draw a little dotted line from the outer part of my circle down over here, and I'm going to do the next one too. Okay, notice there's quite a bit of space between those two lines. Let's do the same thing over here. Notice there's not very much space between these two lines. That's because on this side, we have a steep slope. A lot of times I realize students don't know what steep means. Steep means it's like straight up. A lot of times you'll think that means it's like not straight up. Steep means straight up. So if you go to a football game, especially if you go to a big one, like a professional one, but even next door, even the stands at that stadium, it's like you have to walk straight up to get up those stairs. Shoot, they leave me out of breath because you're going straight up. So a steep hill, steep slope it's not grandma friendly. You're not going to take grandma straight up the mountain. You're going to try and find a gradual slope for grandma. Steep slope is straight up. A gradual slope is like this. These are the ramps like wheelchair ramps for entering buildings. You can walk up those with ease. So a gradual slope is, a slow increase. A steep slope is straight up. You can tell there's a steep slope when the lines are close together. So this side of the mountain looks up a lot steeper to go up. Look how close the lines are. This side of the mountain, our lines are spread apart. So it is a more gradual slope up the mountain. So if you had a choice between taking grandma on this side or this side, you're going to take grandma on this side because it's a steeper slope. Steep slopes are represented by lines close together. Gradual slope is represented by lines far apart. So the closer they are, the steeper it is. So, the top of a steep mountain like Mount Everest those lines are going to be really close together. It's going to be straight up. The steeper the slope, the more challenging it is to climb. All right, so next important thing is on your maps, they are going to give you something called a contour interval. So on this one for a contour interval, we are going to say it is 10 meters. What does that mean? That means every line that I go up is increasing 10 meters. Normally you'll have at least one line that's labeled on your map. Let's say that this line right here is labeled 50. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that line is labeled 50. That's probably the only line you'd have labeled. They're not going to label all of them for you. You just need one because you have the interval. Now, if you know this one, you know that when you go from 50 up, you're increasing by 10 meters. So say we're standing at 50 meters. We walk up to here, we went to 60 meters. If we go up again, we go to 70 meters. But what if we're standing at 50 and we are ready to turn around and we are going down the mountain? Then we, instead of adding 10, we subtract 10. Our interval tells us how much the change in elevation is for each line. So my change is either positive 10 or negative 10. If you're going towards the smaller circle, you're moving up, so you're increasing in elevation. If you're going towards the bigger circle, you're moving down, so you're decreasing, so we would subtract. This would be 40. And if we go down again, this is going to be 30. Again, 20. So that means our map starts 20 meters above sea level. What if you have an X? They tell you that your hiker starts right here. Okay, so it's between 30, it's between 40. So y'all want to guess? 32, 34, 35? We're not going to guess. Because if we guess, we're all going to guess different things. If the X is here, you are still at 30 meters. We don't guess numbers in between. Our answer is either 30 or 40. You can't be at 40 until you cross this line. So you're hiking, you're at 30 meters, you hike, you are still at 30 meters until you cross this line. Once you cross this line, we can count it as 40 meters. So I'm making that easy for you. I don't want you to estimate that. It's not the next elevation until you cross the line. So let's talk about if we're going to go on a hike. We're going to take Grandma on a hike with us. We're going to start this hike at the bottom of the mountain. So here we are. I'm not going to draw Grandma because that's too hard. We're down here at the bottom of the mountain. And we're going to hike all the way to this line. So we started right here. We started at the bottom. We hiked all the way to, you can see that. We hiked all the way to here. So how much did we change elevation? So from point 1 to point 2. So at point 1, our hiker guy is at an elevation of what? Well, what's our lowest point? Hiker guy is at an elevation of 20. He walks all the way with Grandma to point 2. What elevation are we at point 2? We already labeled our lines, so that makes it a lot easier. We can see the stars on the line for 60. So point 2 is elevation of 60. So what was the change in elevation? We started at 20, we moved to 60. So how much do we change? Well, it would be the difference between 20 and 60. 60 minus 20 equals 40 meters. So we didn't walk 60 meters. Yeah, we ended at 60 meters, but we started at 20. So we only walked 40 meters. That's how you calculate the change in elevation. All right, 2 more things. Notice how the map does not stop on, well, our mountain doesn't stop on this top line. It gets higher, but it can't go up 10 meters or we would have another line. So it must be less than 10 meters. So sometimes on your topographic maps, you'll have a triangle. Sometimes it's different symbols, but you'll have a symbol in the middle. Sometimes it's a triangle with a dot, and it'll say like 77. Okay, that means that the highest point on this mountain is 77 meters. It had to be 80 meters because of our interval of 10 to make another circle, another line. But since it didn't go that high, they might just put a symbol and tell you that that's the highest point. So now if our hiker started at 20 and he walked to the top of the mountain, Grandma was feeling it this day. What was the change in elevation? So started at 20, let's think about it. Started at 20 and walked to the highest point. The highest point is 77. So how do we find the change in elevation between 20 and 70? 77. Did we go to 77? Or do we change 77 meters? No, we didn't start at 0. We started at 20. So 77 minus 20 would mean we changed 57 meters in elevation. All right, last thing, I forgot to put our definition of contour interval. We want to let ourselves know that the contour interval is the change in elevation between contour lines. If you want to put that in your own words, go ahead. So change in elevation between contour lines. If I was going to put that in my own words, I would say it's how much each line changes, or it's how much each line is worth. That's what would make sense in my mind. I know that each line is 10 meters. Your contour interval will not always be 10 meters. It could be 50. It could be 2. It could be 200. You have to look at the map and read that, because they're only going to give you one line labeled, but that's okay. You can count every other line. So if you can count by 10, you could answer any question about this map. And you have a calculator. You could do 50 plus 10, 50 minus 10. You can answer any topographic map question. Next, y'all are going to have some practice, but don't worry, because I made a video on giving you a little help with that practice. And hopefully, if you're struggling, you come to Zoom where I can help you out some more. All right, so I'm noticing that,